This is the Blaze Radio on demand.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services.
At 800-600-1645. That's 800-600-1645. 800-600-1645.
Now, spreading freedom across the nation. This is
The Buck Sexton Show.
Team Buck, welcome to the Freedom Hunt. Great to have you here as always. Thank you for joining. 888-900-3393. This was not unexpected. Wasn't sure where it would happen first, but you are seeing the beginning of the revolt of the fourth branch of government, the permanent bureaucracy. If you want to understand the State Department, all you really have to know is the there are two State Department attributed sayings in this country that really give you a good sense of what it's like over there. I spent a good portion of time in those in those State Department conference rooms, meeting with people, talking to people. And if you really want to know what's going on, all you have to do is know that they say that your options are for national security, suffer in silence, do some diplomacy, or nuclear war. That's number one. So, of course, diplomacy is not just the most important thing. It's the only thing, unless you just want to suffer or you want nuclear war. And then the department comes and goes, but, I had that completely wrong. Presidents come and go, but the department is forever. That's the other thing. There's a very imperious attitude you get over at State. And this always gets me in trouble because I know there are lots of great people at the State Department. I have many friends. And it's a place that there are some incredibly talented, hardworking people. But the general ethos of the place is bureaucratic sloth. I'm just going to say it. Just is. Just the reality. A lot of red tape. A lot of slow-moving parts. Too many parts. Not a lot of accountability. So, with all that said, you look at the latest from the Washington Post here is that the State Department's entire senior management team has just resigned. As we know, Rex Tillerson has been given the job of running the State Department as Secretary of State. And while he's still just getting ready to get used to that, or getting used to it, I suppose, we find that inside Foggy Bottom, there are many people who have decided to resign unexpectedly. This is the piece in the Washington Post. Patrick Kennedy, who was the Undersecretary for Management, he's been in the job for 9 years. 3 of his top officials resigned unexpectedly. And then Assistant Secretary of State for Administration Joyce Ann Barr, Assistant Secretary of State for Consular Affairs Michelle Bond, Ambassador Gentry Smith, Director of the Office of Foreign Ministry, et cetera, all career Foreign Service officers serving in multiple administrations. Some of them are retiring. Some of them might be given assignments elsewhere in the Foreign Service. Now, other than Kennedy, who came up in the Hillary Clinton email investigation, interesting, isn't it? These are not people you would likely have heard of, nor would you particularly care. But they're calling this a house cleaning of senior government officials. This is illustrating a much broader trend, a much more important point, and that is that the government, when I tell you that the government has been infiltrated by progressives in many of the same ways the universities have been infiltrated, not just infiltrated, but overtaken, they are the dominant ethos. They are the organizing principle now inside of these bureaucracies and institutions. You have a lot of folks who have all sorts of government power as bureaucrats, not elected power, and they find themselves in positions to dictate to others a lot of politically motivated policy. And they are the first ones to cry foul over a Hatch Act violation. The progressive mind likes bureaucracy and likes to be in these large systems, these enormous institutions, because you can always force people to do things and then hide behind the system. There's an endless array of little rules and regulations inside state, CIA, all these places. They can drive you nuts. And they do. They drove me nuts. The amount of stupid stuff I had to deal with inside the CIA was truly mind-blowing. The sorts of things when you would turn around and ask, why do I have to do, I have to spend 3 hours doing this now? I have to spend my day doing that now? People would look at you and say, oh, yeah, I know, it's terrible. Everyone would agree it was terrible and unnecessary and stupid and pointless and a waste of taxpayer dollars. Nobody would do anything about it. That's what it's like to be in a large federal bureaucracy. I'm sure it's the same pretty much everywhere. CIA is supposed to be lean and mean as federal bureaucracies go. I don't even want to know what it's like at the Department of Agriculture or Commerce. I have a feeling it's not exactly a four-alarm fire in terms of the speed and efficiency with which everyone's acting day in and day out. But they have become part of the bureaucratic blob, and they see Trump coming in, and he offends their sensibilities. If you're a civil servant, you're supposed to do the job for the benefit of the American people. It's not supposed to change the moment that there's a new administration in place that you don't like. You still have a job to do. These are not individuals who, at least in general, I have to look at each of their job titles, are senior enough that they're going to be implementing policy, and this is going to be some moral objection for them. I don't see that happening. And I have to say, I have a little bit of this in me, too. I didn't resign right when Obama came into office. I grumbled a bit to friends and some colleagues that I trusted that this guy, I'm sick of being told how he's a genius. I see no evidence for that. I'm sick of being told he's the smartest foreign policy president in history when he hasn't even taken the oath of office. I'm sick of all of it already. But I didn't resign because of that. It was just a happy coincidence. I went about my life. I would have kept working at the CIA under an Obama presidency. I did for a time. I wouldn't have wanted to have been Obama's CIA director. There's a difference. Appointees versus civil servants. Civil servants are supposed to do the job. The job is necessary regardless of who's in power in the White House and which administration's in charge. And that's the way this game is supposed to be played. That's the way this is supposed to happen. And yet, you have this newest data point that that foreign service officers in regional bureaus have been leaving their posts or resigning. The whole story, or the point of this story, why is this a news story in the Washington Post? What they're saying is the experts, and you know the long and sordid history of progressives believing that expertise overrides individual rights, freedom, liberty, law, that the smartest people should make the decisions for everyone else, and they get to decide what means smartest. They have a long connection to this idea. So the story in the Washington Post, and you'll see more of these as well, is the true experts are fleeing these institutions because they refuse to work under a Trump administration. I think this has an interesting corollary effect, or there's a side effect here that they're not taking into account, and that is this is exposing for the American people to see that there are very politicized civil servants who are supposed to be non-political in many branches of government. And the State Department is an especially left-wing place. You have to take and if you're talking about foreign service officers, you have to take the foreign service exam. I was very close with a foreign service officer when I lived in D.C. for a while, so I know quite a bit about how their day-to-day operates and what's required to get in. No more details on that one. Nonetheless, they think that this is showing the American people, look at how bad Trump is, our best and brightest are leaving government. I think this shows a lot of Americans, so these places are really just extensions of college campuses now. These are now places where politics override the needs of the American people that are supposed to be tended to by these civil servants. That's why we are literally paying their salaries with tax dollars. You would think that there's plenty of work for them to do. I would also say, especially for individuals who have a particular expertise, whether they're at state or anywhere else, if they think the Trump administration is inept, why not try to help? Why not do your part to keep the expertise in place that can make the government run better? But as I was saying to you, this is much more widespread than anybody who hasn't been in the government realizes. The amount of snickering I used to hear in CIA meetings about Bush, just all of the snide comments and remarks, even up to pretty senior levels, versus the way that people would just, Obama was giving them the vapors. They just thought Obama was amazing. Oh, he's the best. He's a genius. He's brilliant. It was impossible to ignore that. It was impossible not to notice that I was in rooms a lot of the time surrounded by leftists of one kind or another, whether I don't know how far left, but certainly not conservative constitutionalists. Changes a bit when you get into the National Clandestine or the Directorate of Operations. They changed the name back. NCS is what it was for a while. It changes a bit. But for the analyst cadre, a lot of lefties, a lot of them. And that there are these senior officers leaving the State Department right when Trump comes in, and they're losing ambassadors. Plenty of people that can take that AMBO's place. A lot of State Department officers wait their whole careers to get a chance to be an ambassador. So I am sure it will be just fine. It's all part of the bigger story, though. And the story is that the smart, good people won't serve under Trump because he's so bad. Well, what does it say about them that they won't even wait until any policies are implemented? And they're supposed to be in non-political positions. They are functionaries. They are bureaucrats. I'm not talking about AMBOs now. That's a little different. But for these State Department management bureaucrats, they can't handle the heat under a Trump administration. They can't stick around and try to make things run a little better. At least give it a shot. This is how much they are dedicated. This is how much they are dedicated to the idea of a Democrat as opposed to a Republican. They will leave their cushy post. They will step down. They will step aside. I do want to give them some credit for sticking to their principles. I've said before, I find it very disconcerting that there are so few resignations, so much complaining via leaks to the press about various administrations, but so few senior-level resignations. You don't see that. People resigning in protest of what's going on. Given all the debates we've had over national security and foreign policy of the last decade, how many high-profile resignations have you seen over the last 15 years? Now, some of these State Department officers are retiring, some of them are moving around, but I do think it's interesting that we're not talking about the head of a department, that's a political appointee that has to implement policy of the presidency. We're talking about people who are lower down the scale. They were supposed to be just doing a job that was for the benefit of the American people. But many of them seem to think they were doing a job that was to the benefit of the Obama administration. And that's it. Or they've been so polluted with anti-Republican and anti-Trump hatred that they don't think there's any good they could do if they stayed in their positions at the State Department. It's a sad commentary. I think it's a much sadder commentary on what's happened to the fourth branch of government, the bureaucracy, than it is about the Trump administration. And I will admit that there are some senior appointees in the Trump administration that would not have made my list. That said, there are some others that would have been very high on the list. And I don't get to make those calls. It's imperfect, but are we judging it by what standard? Valerie Jarrett, David Axelrod, Ben Rhodes. Look at the most important figures in the Obama administration. Did we ever get all these stories about how they were either partisan hacks or completely unqualified? Or no, none of that. It was all hope and change. The world's going to be amazing. Everything is awesome. Obama's the best. And then it wasn't. And with Trump, it's the exact opposite. Everything is terrible. Everything is awful. All of his appointees stink. And if you like him, you're the worst.